Good afternoon, Tom. Thank you for being here to answer these questions. Our first question comes from Michael H. Can you speak to how you deal with physical pain in this physical reality? How do you deal those? And are there any tips on using intent or metaphors to reduce one's own experience of physical pain? Second, do you experience any pain navigating in the non-physical? And can you provide any tips on navigating that experience? He explains a rare event. He has slammed into walls or flown through glass windows in non-physical reality, and at the last moment imagined the glass breaking, and in that instant felt glass cutting his skin. He immediately opened his eyes, and there was no injury, but there was an echo of that cut in my hand. I'm curious if it was all my own creation. How would I stop myself or any other being from sending similar information I wouldn't want?
Well, a bunch of questions there, but I'll start in the middle and work toward both ends. The experience you had flying through the glass, imagining that it was breaking, then you could feel the pain. And when you wake up, you have a similar pain in the same place on your body. That all occurs in your mind, and you are the cause of all of it. What happens is that you fly through a glass pane. Then the thought comes to you of, oh, I just went through glass. It's a good thing the glass didn't break. But what if the glass did break? And this is what your mind does. If your mind's not as disciplined as it should be, it starts asking these little questions and running a little dialogue alongside what you're doing rather than just sitting down and being quiet. And when that happens, you you get the experience that you're thinking about. Oh, what if the glass broke? What would that feel like? Basically, you're asking a question and you get an answer, which is what it would feel like. Then you wake up, and of course, you will feel something the same in your hand because that's just what was in your mind. It wouldn't last all day or anything. If you really get up and walked around and did things, it would just disappear after a little bit. So, all of that is your own mind's creation. And to get rid of it, you just have to have a little more discipline on your mind and not have it so busy asking questions and posing what ifs and that sort of thing, because all of those actually do affect the data stream that you get. Even though you didn't intend to ask questions about breaking glass, you did, so you start getting answers. Here's what it would feel like if you went through and cut yourself, and now you feel the cuts of the glass. Or you imagine that it's broken, so you imagine the pain that would be involved in that. It's all real. What you imagine and what's real are not often two different things, particularly when you're not in the physical reality. In the physical reality, your imagination moves things slightly. Your imagination is your thoughts, it's where you're focusing your attention. Okay. And that may move things a little, but when you're in the non physical, your imagination can create things very quickly, and it creates them in a way that they seem completely real. So you have to keep your mind under control and not have it going off asking questions like that on the side. Now, how do you deal with pain that you don't cause? You smash your finger with a hammer, you have an operation, and it's going to be painful for a few days before you recover. The best way to deal with that is just ignore it. It's in your mind, it's just the opposite of with the glass. With the glass, you imagine the pain. When you actually have physical pain, you imagine there's no pain. So it's a similar kind of thing. So you imagine no pain, there's no pain. I don't feel anything. Well, that's hard to imagine because there's the pain. So you start out and say, oh, I imagine that the pain is a little less. Phew, that's not quite so bad now. It's getting less. And then you can wait for a bit and say, okay, I want to listen it up some more. And you keep making it less and less and less until it doesn't bother you anymore. Now, people do that automatically without trying to do that, just by getting their mind focused away from the pain. So if you have a toothache, toothaches can be pretty painful, but you'll notice if you have a toothache and you get very engrossed in something, something happens, where you have to react or not act, or your mind gets focused on something else, you forget about the toothache. And as soon as you kind of get out of that space and get back in your everyday space, then, oh, there's that toothache. It still aches. So as you put your attention on things, they get stronger. The pain will get stronger as you put your attention on that pain. As you take your attention away from it, it'll get less. So if you get very wrapped up in something, even though you have a toothache, the toothache will disappear because your mind is so wrapped up in something else, it just doesn't process the toothache pain. It's too busy somewhere else. That's kind of the way to deal with pain, both physical and non-physical. In the non-physical, the pain's your creation. You think about it. I shouldn't say it's your creation. That it happens is your creation. The actual feelings is what you get in the data stream from the larger conscious system to answer your question, like, what would that feel like if that glass had broken? Well, if you ask that question, then you'll get that answer as a feeling, not as a not as a series of words, but as a feeling. I remember going through a ceiling in an old house that you lived in, Donna, where I came in and out of body. And anyway, I went up to that ceiling and it was like, wow, this ceiling's thick, it's dense, and it's thick. Usually you push through a ceiling and you got 4, 5, 6 inches and it's done. This you push through the ceiling and 4, 5, 6 inches, you're still in it. And another 4, 5, 6 inches, you're still in it. And it's like, whoa, when are we going to get to the other side? This thing's is the thickest ceiling I'd ever pushed through. And of course, it turns out that your ceiling was rock. It was a very, very old house when they built everything out of stone, including the roof. And the ceiling was built out of stone. So, yeah, you can notice these things. But had I not noticed that, I wouldn't have gotten any data on it. I noticed it just because it was taking an inordinate amount of time to go through it. Taking too long. Should have been just a momentary flash and you're through it. This was dragging on. So I went back to investigate it a little. It was hard and cold and whatever.
Well, I can
So
verify that. That
yeah,
was a 14th century little house that was made of square or rectangular stone, carved stone that was about 18 inches long and maybe a foot wide. So that's an estimate. It was probably larger than that, but I can verify that that was the ceiling and the
yeah,
whole construction of the house.
yeah, yeah. I went back and asked Donna, what's with your ceiling? So it's your mind triggers on little things like that. And if your mind is very well disciplined, it stays focused on what it's doing and doesn't get wrapped up in the details. It doesn't ask questions like that. Um, you go through you hit a wall, and in the non-physical, when you hit a wall, there really is no pain at all. But because you expect pain because you hit a wall, that's your expectation from the physical. In the physical, you hit a wall like that and it's going to hurt some. Well, in the non-physical, it doesn't hurt at all. Unless you think that it should hurt. Oh, I'm about to hit that wall. That's going to hurt. Well, when you hit it, guess what? It hurts just like it was a physical wall because that's what you're expecting. That's what you get. If your mind says, oh, this won't hurt at all, and you turn off that, then you won't get that in your data stream. It won't send you the pain and the crush feeling of you slamming against the wall.
He did say he imagined the glass breaking, and in that
Mm-hmm.
instant felt the glass cutting my skin. So
Exactly.
there was a whole series
Yeah,
of thought.
exactly. And if he hadn't thought of that, it never would have happened. Yeah. So it was playing out, giving him the information that he was thinking about. So to prevent it, you stop thinking about those things. You just have in your mind go through this glass, no problem. Glass will present no barrier. Wall will present no barrier. Now, when I went through your ceiling, I didn't feel any barriers. That's your ceiling, was a barrier. I just thought it took an unusual time to clear it and get beyond it. There's just something. And I just marked to myself, oh, that's unusual. It's a little fact that then I could ask you about to see if there was anything physical
It wasn't a fear or
that caused
anything.
that.
It was simply
No,
an observation that, oh, this is a data stream of something that is not a typical wall.
right. Not a typical ceiling, not a typical wall. Yeah, so I just got that. So that didn't change anything. But yeah, there was some fear attached, no doubt, to the breaking of the glass. Oh no, going through the glass. Oh, well, that's not really a problem. This is the non-physical. We don't have to worry about physical things here. But habit of thinking says, oh no, glass, it's going to be a problem. So that was it. He imagined the fear. And just like you can imagine fear in the non-physical, you can unimagine fear. What I mean is imagine no fear
Yeah.
in the physical. And it'll work the same way. You just don't want, that data. It's like you refuse that data. So you get sent the data that has the fear in it, describing your physical situation, and you just choose not to process that data. Don't want to process any of the fear data. So in your mind, you're thinking, well, I'm going to make this fear go away and be less and less. So first you just think about it, process just enough of it to let me know that it's still there. Yeah, I talked to a guy who had a kidney problem. He was a young guy too. He was maybe 30, and he had serious kidney issues. And he had to, I think he had some operations on his kidneys, but they told him that he would always have this pain. And they taught him to ignore it. And he was telling me about how, the process of how to ignore it and so on. And he said, well, I can ignore it to where I was a dinner guest of his. So I was at his house having dinner. He says, like, now, I don't notice it unless I look for it. If I notice it, oh, where's that pain? I'll feel it, but it's in the distance. It's removed from me. It's not a problem. And he doesn't really feel it in his body so much as he felt it over there, like it was not quite part of him. It was removed. So he could feel that he still had it if he put his attention a little bit toward it. But then as soon as he took his attention away from it, back to, what was going on, then he wouldn't think about it at all. So he said it took some time to learn that, but that the mind is a very powerful tool. You can turn things on and off pretty easily. You just set your mind to turn that off. And some people find that difficult, but if that's difficult, just get your mind to turn it down, then turn it down a little more, then turn it down a little more, then turn it down a little more to the point that, all right, it's there, but it's not a bother.
You could bring up a metaphor of, say, a dial that was 1 to 10, and whatever your pain was feeling, just keep notching it down
Mhm.
as a metaphor to use for that. So to follow up on Michael's question, have you ever encountered any type of pain in the non-physical?
No, I don't think so in the non-physical. But then I was pretty disciplined, I guess. So I would go through. I remember the first time when the entities came when I was like 6 years old, and I went out through the window down to the yard, and I was moving across, and I came to the big head. It was like this hedgerow between houses, and I got to this dense hedge. It wasn't something you could get through, and I went right through it. And I remember kind of curling up in a ball, expecting to be scratched, and I would be if I was shoved through that hedge physically. It'd be terrible. But I went right through it, never felt it. I could feel that I was going through the hedge, but there was no, just like you can feel you're going through a roof. You can see that there's material there and you go through it, but you don't have any real feeling about it scratching your skin or anything.
Right.
So I had that sort of feeling. But then I had a couple of guides guiding me, and maybe that was the difference.
Sure. Now, when you were young as well, 6 or 7, you cut your hand badly, and you concocted a way to deal with that, but that didn't
Mm-hmm.
frighten you either. Was that
No, did not frighten me at all.
all right?
No.
That was something you fixed on your own with some
Mm-hmm.
leaves or something like that.
Yeah, I made a compress, something that with the dry blood would be sticky and would stay in place. So yeah, I intuitively knew that. I had guides that would
Oh,
tell me what to do and how to do it and what should go. And if there was a problem, they would have told me to, go home right away or this or that, or I would have gotten that kind of thing. But
oh yes, of course.
so I played around with it for a while, and then I, got to use just my hand as a compress until I figured out how to do that, and that got tiresome because then I only had one hand, and so then I needed some material, and so I got a bunch of leaves and made a compress and held it on for about 10 minutes until under pressure, until it stuck and the bleeding stopped. And then I just went on playing. It wasn't a problem after that. It scabbed over and healed perfectly well. But I always had guides that would guide me or tell me what I had to do or not do. So that was easy because they had always been around.
Of course. Well, thank you for answering the question for Michael, and thank you, Michael. Hope that helped you.
I and MBT Events hope you like this video. If you do, then you should consider being a Patreon member, because Patreon members get early access to our special content. You will also be able to get your questions answered by me in special Q&A sessions, and most importantly, your contribution as a patron member will enable us to produce the content that you're looking for. So thank you.